Live from a bunker in the heart of the Ozarks, a podcast that knows Prince Charles from a polo thing. It's Sif Pop. Welcome to Sif Pop Weekly, streaming live most weekends or available to download later in your podcast feed. Unless, of course, you're a patron.
Patrons get those perks!
Yeah, they do. Patrons get those perks. I'm your host, Aaron Dicer, and each week we'll chat about movies, TV, and whatever else from the pop culture universe is on our minds. And please welcome our guest this week. She's from up north. Well, sort of. It's a bit south, really, of north, which is basically west. It's Alice Ginevra McKelly.
G'day.
Hey, Alice, welcome to the show. Thank you for being on. You may notice Andrew is not with us today, and he had to take some recovery time from vaccination, which many people are having to do. And so we know that he's on his way to recovery on that, but it's going to be Alice and I carrying the show today. Alice is, by the way, a writer for sifpop.com. And tell me a little bit about how you kind of got involved at the website and started writing for movies and your love of movies. Like, how did you develop all that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of my love of movies, that developed unexpectedly, I'd say. When I was very little, it was just part of my everyday. So my dad and I would go to the movies once a week. We'd go to the movies, see whatever was out. It didn't really matter. And that was just part of my everyday life. And then at home, Mum and I just consumed so much TV, movies. It was just something I loved. And inadvertently, I always was like, oh, I want to be this when I grow up. But after a while, I realized I didn't actually want to be a criminal anthropologist. I just really liked bones. And I didn't really want to be a forensic scientist. I just really liked NCIS. So I realized that around, year 10, year 11, which is kind of like junior year-ish, American version, that's when I was like, oh, wait a minute, I just really love watching movies and TV, so that makes sense. And so then I realized and just fully leaned into it. And in terms of Sif Pop, so I was at uni studying film and also criminology, but that was just more, again, my NCIS bones love over there. I was like, yeah, I'll do a degree in that, it's fine. And I started writing, and then I was listening to Sif Pop, and I heard you guys talk about the website, and so I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna go to the contact us page, talk about how much I really love you guys, and be like, if you need writers, I've written reviews before, I'd be up for it. And the old managing editor, Blake, got in contact, and the rest is history.
Nice. You've been writing for a couple of years then for the website?
Yeah, it's been a few years now. I'd say 3 or 4 now. Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. Yeah. Well, it's good to finally have you on the show. Yes. I feel like this is my chance to do late night show talk host kind of stuff where we had stuff we were talking about before the show, and now I'm going to pretend like it's the first time we're talking about it.
Yeah.
But your name is so beautiful, Alice Ginevra. That is such a cool name. Is there a cool story behind this name?
Why? It's funny you ask. There is. So Alice Ginevra is actually my first name. But I just go by happy to just go by Alice. Don't feel the need to
Mhm.
call me Alice Ginevra every time. But basically, Alice was the name my dad picked out, and he picked it from a song, an Italian song. And Ginevra was the name my mum picked out, and that is actually the Italian version of Guinevere, aka King Arthur's wife.
Mhm.
My name was meant to be Ginevra Alice, but after my mum had given birth and was, passed out in the hospital, my dad did the birth certificate and put the name he liked most first, and the name my mum wanted second. Hence Alice Ginevra, which, all things considered, ended up being probably the better choice when we moved from Italy, which is where I was born, to Australia when I was like 7. And I can tell you right now, people have a lot less of a hard time trying to pronounce Alice than they do when they just look at the word Ginevra, and it's like their brain fries out a little bit. So,
Right.
in class, I'd always know that when it was my turn in the role, because I could always just hear it like it was like a pause, and I would just be like, just Alice, just Alice.
Ah, that's amazing. I wonder how much after that choice was made, was there any fallout? Like, arguments? Like, have they told stories to you? Because I'm sure you don't remember, but like, have they
Yeah.
told stories to you? Like, your mom's like, I can't believe you did that. Like,
Well, look, not to go into too much detail, but given it was a 48-hour labor, I don't think my mum was thinking very clearly afterwards. So she was probably like, "Look, the kid's out of me. I don't care anymore as
everything's
long as
good.
she's alive." Yeah,
Everything's
exactly.
good. That's amazing. Well, I'm excited to talk movies with you today. We had a good time during the Sif Pop members only pre-show doing Alice's List of Shame game. That was a ton of fun. Producer Phil joined us on that one for a second guest to guess at what your movie was that you'd actually seen. So if you're interested in that, you can become a Sif Pop member. That's at patreon.com/sifpop. But I'm excited to talk about our shows today. And one of the reasons our movies today, because it feels to me, and tell me, Alice, if you feel this way, it feels to me like Quiet Place 2 is the movie, at least here in America, and I know you're in Australia, that's like, oh, the movies are back. Like there was just something that seems to have clicked with this movie where it's like, we're far enough, the numbers are down far enough, the vaccines are kicking in, people are vaccinated. Like it just felt like, I know the showing I went to was much more full than any show I'd been to during the pandemic. I've been a couple times just before this, and even Tenet, when I went and saw Tenet in June or whatever. So it feels like this is the one. It feels like this is the one where people are like, okay, movies are back. Do you kind of get that sense too?
I have a very different experience actually. So
Oh,
it's been a few months here where we've pretty much been back to normal. We haven't, like, the theaters have been open since pretty much November last year where I live. And so it's been open for a while. And I feel like the movie that was that for us was probably around like Raya the Last Dragon. Like right after
sure.
the new year, people by that point were like, all right, we're good, we're good.
Hmm.
And then yeah, and then I remember when we went to see that movie in the theater, it was like packed. So, and same with Mortal Kombat. While with A Quiet Place too. So where I live in Melbourne, Australia, we've been pretty much COVID free for, yeah, again since like November, but we have had a small upset with about 20 cases in the state. So we've gone into a snap lockdown again. And A Quiet Place 2 came out the day before we went into that 7-day lockdown. So
Oh, yeah.
yes, so I went to see it in IMAX actually, and it was meant to be like all the tickets were sold, but there was maybe a third of the amount of people there. So yeah, I'll be interested to see when we're out of this snap lockdown, which is meant to be Thursday, fingers crossed, how it'll be once that happens.
How's it's what we've all been going through for,
Yeah.
the last 16 months. So I'm always curious, like on the other side of the world, like how has the vaccine distribution been? Like how has Australia been with, getting some vaccines? Like how is that whole thing
Mm.
going with you guys?
Our vaccine rollout has not been stellar. I will say that much. Pretty much no one I know is vaccinated. I'm not eligible to be vaccinated yet. We're still at pretty much over 50 are the only people who are able to be
Mm-hmm.
vaccinated, and under 50, as in people who are like health workers, frontline workers, disability workers, that sort of thing. So I'm probably not going to be eligible until like October, November. It's been
Wow.
really slow. Yeah, our government has not had a lot of good coming at it because of that. Because we are so many less people than you guys. We have 20 million, and it's taking so long. And basically, as well, they haven't been great with subduing fears around the vaccine either. So all the older people who we have to wait to get vaccinated before us young people can get vaccinated aren't, because they're like, oh no, and we're just like, just get vaccinated, I want my vaccine.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully, I know that I'm in line for the Pfizer though, because I'm under 50. So under 50s get Pfizer, over 50s get one called AstraZeneca. So yeah, I know that much.
Right. Yeah, the AstraZeneca is one I've heard internationally. That's not one we've had here locally, at least that I know of. We've had the Moderna, the Pfizer, and the Johnson & Johnson. But yeah, that's why I'm always fascinated, because, we think we're all going through the same thing, but we really aren't. Like we are experiencing the same, obvious foundational pandemic, all that kind of stuff. But everybody's timelines are different. Everybody has done better or worse in the initial lockdown. Everybody's been done better or worse with the, vaccine rollout. So it's always interesting for me to kind of check in on that kind of stuff.
It's been, I think, especially very unique where I live. So I live in the state of Victoria, in Australia. And so between, I would say, I think it was like June until October, we were in hard lockdown. I think we spent about 120 days. And I mean, like, you weren't allowed to leave the house except for grocery shopping, doctor appointments, and like, caregiving sort of things. And also 1 hour of exercise a day. We had an 8 p.m. curfew where you weren't allowed out between 8 p.m. and 5 a.m. Had to wear masks everywhere. Otherwise, you got like a $20,000 fine. And we also had a 5K limit. So we weren't allowed to travel outside of our 5-kilometer radius. And that was for a long time. I can tell you because I moved within those parameters and it was not fun. But basically, yeah. And so that was really intense for us, while the rest of the world was still kind of in that half, like sometimes quarantining, sometimes not. Even the rest of Australia. And then we came out of it and we didn't have any cases at all in our state for a really long time. But it's now happened twice where we've had to go back into hard lockdown for about 7 days, just because we've had a couple of cases so this time we have about 20. And so to get, like, while we wait for them to be traced and like locked down and everything, we have to do this and then we come out. But we're old hats at it now, I'll say that much.
Nice. The other thing I wanted to mention before we get into the movies is Alice is just such an incredible human being. I did not do any kind of time zone math when I told her when the show was. She didn't say a word. It is 4:00 in the morning in Australia right now. And like, Alice, hey, when you're on again, we'll move the show. Like, that is insane that you're up at 4 a.m. to do this.
To be fair, it's 4:50 now.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Oh, okay. It's almost 5. It's almost 5 a.m. Who isn't up by 5 a.m.? Come on.
I know, right? What kind of life are you living otherwise?
That's right. How do you get anything done? Well, we appreciate your commitment. Thank you for being here. Already very much enjoying having you on the show and really excited to talk some movies. We're going to, of course, do Buried Treasure a little bit later. We've got a best ever challenge. We're going to do best ever Disney live action remakes. So small little pool, but some good conversation to have there. And then, of course, we're going to review Cruella and A Quiet Place Part 2. So let's get into it with that. So let's talk about A Quiet Place Part 2. Following the deadly events at home, the Abbott family must now face the terrors of the outside world as they continue their fight for survival in silence. Forced to venture into the unknown, they quickly realize that the creatures that hunt by sound are not the only threats that lurk beyond their sand path. We finally are getting Quiet Place Part 2. This was one of the first movies to push their release date when the pandemic happened. Like we said, like 16 months ago. This was originally supposed to come out in, I think, April, like early April of 2020, maybe even late March. And of course, is the follow up to John Krasinski's A Quiet Place. And he's directing again, and some of the same cast, some new cast members as well, including Cillian Murphy. What did you think? Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay, Alice?
I would say I'm sitting at about midway through like it, leaning towards maybe slightly on the lower end of like it.
Okay. All right. Sounds like I like this a little bit more than you. Man, I think I'm low side of loved it. I think
Cool.
I know I'm at least high side of liked it. We'll find out the more we talk about it, kind of, as we kind of verbalize what we're thinking here. But I had a really good time with this. And we were talking pre-show with producer Phil about this idea of movies are back. I saw this on IMAX, the first IMAX I've seen in 16 months. How does that psychologically impact me? And I am somebody who's always upfront and very clear about bias being a real thing in all human beings. And one of those biases is the excitement of seeing it on a giant screen with the best sound and just even the quality production of it. I have a great TV at home. I've got a decent sound system, but it's nothing like the speakers they have, at the IMAX. In the screen, the size of the screen. So there has to be a little bit of that involved. But even beyond that, I think I really, really enjoyed this. I think what I like the most about it is that it builds the world, in my opinion, in just like the perfect amount for a sequel. Like there's a real element of here's a little more information about what is happening in this world, because the first one was very centralized, localized on this family. Everything was happening around them. This one expands a little bit and goes, okay, here's a little bit of what's happening in, the greater sense of things. And I really enjoyed the amount of world building that took place here. And I think that gave me a foundation to really enjoy kind of what they were going through. I also think the performances were absolutely astonishing. Emily Blunt continues to be amazing. Huge shout out to Millicent Simmons, who is just absolutely astonishing in this. Noah Jupe's great. Like I mentioned, Cillian Murphy. Like the entire cast in this movie is so good. And so I think that plays a big role in what I enjoyed about it as well. What are some things that you enjoyed about it, Alice?
Yeah, well, you definitely hit a lot of the main points.
Sure.
One thing is that the world building I liked, but they didn't go crazy with it. I was a bit worried they were going to try and explain everything about the aliens, and tell us all about them, and we learn everything so that there's no mystery anymore. And they really didn't do that, which I appreciated. And the world building was just enough to show like, oh, there's more out there, but there's still a lot of mystery, which I don't know if that's for a potential third part, but we'll see. The acting, particularly Emily Blunt, and I am such a fan of Cillian Murphy. I feel like he's one of those sneaky actors that you don't think of when people are like, who are your favorite actors? But every time he's on screen, he's excellent. So definitely up there. Something I actually really enjoyed was the opening scene, like the movie setter, if you will, where it is that, like they show it in the trailer, the kind of day one setting. I really enjoyed it because it put me kind of right back in there. It's a great way to just throw yourself back into the world. And actually, so the way I watched it was I went to IMAX and I watched it in a double feature with A Quiet Place and then directly after A Quiet Place 2. And it had been like, I'd say 1.5 years since I'd seen A Quiet Place last time. So it was a nice sort of refresher going in. But it was nice to actually have that, again, the context without it going way too deep into it, of just knowing like, okay, if you were in day one, this is what happened to you in terms of the family. So that was really cool. And then I'll also say that there is some truly badass moments in this movie from the characters.
Totally.
There are some really cool moments that I really enjoyed, particularly from, I'll say, the kids and Millicent Simmons, where I was like, okay, I'm interested. Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell Krasinski really likes to give his characters those kind of like, oh yeah, you did, kind of things. And there's an element of, there's almost an element of 80s, 90s action star,
Mm-hmm.
quality to that, but toned down in a way that it feels still more authentic to kind of
For sure.
modern characters and how they're not like delivering, big punchlines after kills or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So like, how's that sound?
Yeah.
Or whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
Volumes
Like they
turned all the way up, buddy.
yeah, like the you don't feel like they're making decisions where you're like, all right. Like I feel like if
Right.
I had that much adrenaline pumping through my body, as to be honest, as I do when I watch the movie, because that's
Right.
another thing I really liked is the tension was
Yeah.
still there. I went with my partner and I was gripping his hand so hard he had to like force himself out of my hand because I was like, oh no, oh no, oh no. And I literally did one of these at one point where I had my hand in front of my face and was
Mhm.
watching it through my fingers. So still a master of suspense, Krasinski, for sure.
Yeah, he does a really great job at what I call there's this horror movie trope where it's thing in the background,
Yeah.
like a big horror movie trope, and it can come off as cheap sometimes, but the
Mm.
way he does it is so earned. Every time that it happens, it happens in a way that I feel like makes sense and isn't cheap. And there are just some great. We should do a SIF spoil because I have some moments I want to talk
Yes.
about in this one
Me
for
too.
sure.
Me too, for sure.
So we'll definitely do a SIF spoil that should show up in your feed as well. But yeah, without going into specifics now, there are definitely some of those moments where I feel like, okay, Krasinski gets tension. He gets tension. He understands how to build it. He understands how to release it. He understands how that works. And because of that, I was never bored during this movie.
Mm.
I was always with the characters, all the
Yeah.
way through. Now, having
Yeah.
said that, it's not a perfect film. So
No.
let's talk about some of the negatives. Alice, why don't you go first? What are some of the things on the negative side?
Okay, so I don't know if this is a negative, but I do think Krasinski was giving Tarantino a bit of a run for his money this movie with the amount of feet shots there were throughout it. And I mean that I noticed how many there were, which in the first movie I definitely didn't notice about that much about it. And yet in this one I'm like, okay, we're focusing on the fact that they're barefoot and we're staying on it for a long time now. But that was definitely something I noticed. But the other thing, and this is the main one that has kind of made me sit in that mid tier like it rather than higher end,
Yeah.
is that and I mean, this could be a positive or negative based on who you are, but it felt exactly the same as the first one. It was very, very similar in my opinion, in the way it played out. And so I kind of felt like if I'm going to watch one, I'll watch the first one. I don't really need to watch the second one, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. And that brings me to what I think is probably my main negative with this is as fun as it was and as tension building as it was and as interesting as it was, this movie ends spectacularly. I love the way this movie ends, and we'll talk about it more in the SIF spoil. But it got me thinking of, did it earn that ending? I'm not sure it earns its ending. I really feel like there could have been so much. If this is where you're going with the ending, which I love that that's the destination point. I feel like you have to do a little more work building us to understand that moment, understand why it's so meaningful. I just feel like the movie had this moment it wanted to do at the end, but didn't really put the work in to get us there emotionally to care enough about it. So it was kind of like a bittersweet ending for me because I was like, oh, this is great, but also, did we earn this? Like, I couldn't. Yeah. I feel like I'm not kidding here. And people who listen often know, I'm a movie crier. I feel like I could have been crying at the end of this movie had it been handled even just a little bit better. So yeah.
I agree so much because I could sense, I was like, are they going to end it? Is this it? Is this the end? Then it ended. And I was like, okay. Because I was waiting for the goosebumps moment, right? I was waiting for, because there are moments in movies where I'll cry like as you said, but not because it's sad or anything, but because of how powerful it is. And I'm like,
Sure,
oh my
yeah.
god, these characters are amazing. But
Yeah.
I didn't feel that in this one, and I really felt it was. I'm trying to do it in a way that's not spoilery, but I think I was also left at the end being like, okay, cool. Which I don't know if that's because Krasinski had this like image in his head and he's like, that's where we're going, but he didn't really think about the lead up
Yes,
so much.
exactly.
But it, for example, the ending, you mentioned the 80s, 90s action movies. It gave me really intense, like OG Blade Runner vibes in the way it was shot. And I just kind of feel like it was a bit too much of a, oh yeah, look at this. This is great. Oh, without it,
Yeah.
I 100% agree, because that was one of my major things too, where I was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it was like it's weird to say, and for me, it sounded like it had even less an impact on you than it did on me. But it's weird to say, like, well, my goosebumps weren't big enough. I had goosebumps, but they were just tiny little goosebumps, and I wanted really big goosebumps.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
it's a little
Like,
weird to say, but that's kind of how I felt.
Yeah, and I think that part of it is the fact that yes, it delivered on the tension, and again, I'm not sure if it's just me, but I feel like there was more jump scares in this one than the first one.
Yes.
Which I know, again, it's something I noticed, which kind of pulled me out a little bit, and then I got back in. But I just, again, because of the way it ended and because of the way it was leading up, I do feel like there was similar. The way it plays out, the beats are very similar, and so I'm like, well, A Quiet Place is just this, but better. So I'm just going to watch that, and I don't really need to watch this. So 100%.
Yeah, I think the question a lot of people will ask is it as good as the first one? I don't think it is.
No.
I think the first one is excellence in filmmaking, and this one is just a really good movie. And in my opinion, and there's also part of it. The one other thing I would say, there is part of it that this movie. Look, every movie has to have its convenience. Every movie has to have its stuff that, it happens because it's a movie. And honestly, in this one, when this kind of stuff happened, I was I had plenty of grace to give it because I was having such a good time. But there is some of that stuff, especially towards the end, where it's like, really, this just happened to happen. There are few of those moments that I want to throw out there as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, like, at the end of the day, what I want to say with this is I had a good time when I was in it. It's just kind of the more I think about it, the more questions I have. And I'll bring them up specifically in the spoilers because I have a good amount of like notes on the spoilers. But that's just, while with A Quiet Place, I don't feel like I had as many questions that were left unanswered in a way that was unsatisfactory. So there are definitely mysteries in A Quiet Place versus A Quiet Place 2, but I feel like the mysteries that were left in A Quiet Place made sense, while the mysteries left in A Quiet Place 2, I was just kind of like, oh, were they just too lazy to answer that? Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to do that. I'm excited to do the spoil. If you've seen the movie, feel free to download that episode and check that out as well. Any final things, Alice, about A Quiet Place 2 before we move on?
I will say, I feel like this movie suffers from your classic having child actors in a sequel versus the original, which is, again, having seen the first two back to back, there is some obvious aging that has happened in no amount of time. So that took me out a little bit at the start, where I was like, they are about 3 years older, but in the movie, it's been about an hour. So that was definitely something to be wary of.
I know adolescence feels fast, but it's not that fast.
I don't know. Maybe if you almost get killed by an alien that can like kill you with sound, maybe that's what happens. It's like fast aging. It's like a superpower. But
absolutely could be.
I'm just gonna say.
It's hard. It's difficult because you could also do the thing they tried to do in It Chapter 2, which is they actually raise the register of their voices and like tried to de-age them digitally. And it's like, I'm not sure which I like. If you can't, because when you do that poorly, it even more takes you out. And so I think I prefer this. Just be like, it is what it is. We'll just go with it.
I prefer it too. I think it's just something to be wary of, like going in. I mean, it's probably obvious, but just the kids are older. They're obviously older, but just ignore that and you'll be good.
And they're older. they're older in scenes that take place before A Quiet Place. So,
yeah, and the little brother has definitely changed actors because they clearly will. He's probably like shot up or something since then. So they're like,
definitely.
It was actually really funny how they kept covering his face in the movie. As to be like, oh yeah, he's just like, it was his face was always on Emily Blunt or like turned away, and I was like, I see what you're doing there.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do. You don't want you don't want American Sniper baby moment.
That's true as well.
Like that. So you just got to do what you got to do.
Exactly.
Since Andrew's not here, I will say no post credits scene on this one. So, all right, let's move on and talk a little bit about Cruella. Set in 1970s London amidst the punk rock revolution. This follows a young grifter named Estella, a clever and creative girl determined to make a name for herself with her designs. She befriends a pair of young thieves who appreciate her appetite for mischief, and together they're able to build a life for themselves on the London streets. This is out in theaters as well as available via Premier Access on Disney Plus. If you got $30 you want to put down on that. Which if you've got a family of, 5 or 6 may make a lot of sense to you. This is, prequel of the 101 Dalmatians movies, or is it just its own universe? Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit here in a bit. Of course, you got Emma Stone, Emma Thompson. What did you think? Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay?
I am firmly in the loved it, probably a bit low side of loved it, but definitely loved it.
Nice, firm in the loved it, with maybe just a little inkling of low side of loved it. I am with you. I think you like this a little bit more than me, just how you said that. I'm on the low side of loved it. I felt very similar about both of these movies, kind of right in the same range. Loved it, really had a great time, but had some things that, couldn't quite get it to a full-on love for me. So why don't you kick us off this time, since you seem to enjoy it more than me? What are some of the things you liked about Cruella?
Well, I can immediately say I did not expect to like this movie, let alone loved it. Nothing I'd seen from the trailers had really pulled me, and the whole time I was like, how are they going to make a woman who wants to kill puppies in any way, shape, or form relatable?
Right.
But what I will say is that this movie hinges on its performances, and boy, do they deliver. Oh my goodness. Emma Stone and Emma Thompson, I could just watch them verbally jousting all day. It was a masterclass. Like the characterization, the way that they performed the line, they delivered the lines. I believed every second of it, and I loved it. So definitely props to them, because I honestly think if they'd cast anyone else in either of the roles, this would probably be way more down for me.
Yeah, very much a Devil Wears Prada, kind of thing going on here between them. Or should we say DeVille versus Prada? Should we go that route?
That's literally how I described it, was a Devil Wears Prada crossed with a heist movie.
Yeah. I think Emma Stone is astonishing in this movie. And you're right. There are a lot of great performances here. Emma Thompson is doing incredible stuff here. But what Emma Stone is doing here seems to me to have the highest level of difficulty in the movie, because she's unhinged, but she is presenting empathy for the audience. That is really difficult to pull off. And I think she does it. Like, you care about that character, you understand that character, the motivations, and at the same time, you see that there is, that unhingedness, beneath the surface. I just think she's incredible. It's not the first time I've watched an Emma Stone movie and gone, oh, okay, she's one of the best actors ever. But it continues to bring that home for me. I do think she's absolutely incredible here. I also want to shout out Joel Fry and Paul Walter Hauser. I think they're both doing great work here, especially Paul Walter Hauser, who's quickly becoming one of my favorite character actors. He was in The Five Bloods recently. He was also in the bomber movie that Clint Eastwood did. It's slipping my mind right now.
Yeah.
What's the name of the guy? Like the guy's name. What was that guy's name?
Stand by. Oh my goodness. I remember watching this.
He's great in that though. Like
Yeah.
he's really really good in these movies. And I
Richard
mean,
Jewell.
yes, thank you, Richard Jewell, of course.
Hmm.
Mark
Yeah.
Strong's in there as well, but again, he's not
Yeah.
really doing anything special. He's great, because it's perfect for him. So everybody's just kind of doing their job, and some people are doing it kind of next level, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I agree. I really like how the way they cast the character actors, especially so Joel Fry. I know from this show Plebs, which is a BBC comedy. Great. If you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. And then like, there's definitely a few moments of like, oh, where have I seen them before? Because in the middle of watching it, because we watched it at home, my partner was like, oh, that's the guy from What We Do in the Shadows, and that's Roger is Nandor from What We Do in the Shadows,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it completely different, and I didn't even notice until he mentioned that, and I was like,
Hmm.
oh my god, of
It's
course.
crazy. It's crazy that
Yeah.
it's the same person. It
Yeah.
really, like, that kind of blew my mind
Yeah.
when I realized that. 'Cause so
Hmm.
different. It's just so different.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So some other stuff that I really enjoyed visually, this movie is just mind blowing. The costumes, the way they're presented. Um, I mean, do we just pencil this in for the Oscar for costume and like hair and stuff? Like, this is just such great work.
Yeah, to be honest, there's a few categories this could fill out because it's yeah, the costumes are just the more I watched it and the more the movie progressed, I was just like, oh, I love it. Oh, I love it. Oh my god, I love it. And then the set design. So I read this bit of trivia that apparently Emma Thompson got very emotional the first day she stepped on set because she
Mhm.
grew up in 70s London and it was apparently like a perfect replica. So that's really, and just everything about it, all the little moments that perfectly represent, if it's a house, the characters, or they just feel real, but they feel sensationalized in a way as well, which I feel really fits the tone of the movie. So they're all accurate, but to a point.
Mhm.
And I also feel like there were a few really interesting editing choices that were made. So there's a long shot early on and some really cool sort of framing moments that I noticed. And I was like, oh, all right, Disney, didn't see that happening. But
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. The
Uh,
feast for the eyes.
the garbage dress was one of my favorites.
Mm,
There's just all these different moments where you're just like, wow, nicely done. So I really,
yeah.
really appreciated that.
Hmm.
Story
Yeah.
wise, how do you
Yeah.
feel about the presentation of this story? Did that work for you?
Well, I really enjoyed the dialogue. But especially once Emma Stone and Emma Thompson are like really into
Hmm.
it. That was great. And when I looked it up, I was like, that's why. Because it's co-written by Dana Fox and Tony McNamara, and Tony McNamara wrote The Favorite and the show The Great. And I
Hmm.
was like, oh, that makes so much sense.
Right? Yeah.
But having said that, I do think for the first like 10 to 20 minutes of this movie, I was very much not into it. I just feel like it was maybe, if we're going to jump into negatives,
Sure.
the first 10 to 20 minutes really did not do it for me. And it wasn't until after that I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm really enjoying this. I just feel like it was a bit rushed. It was a bit typical, I would say. And yeah, it wasn't for me.
It really depends on Emma Stone's narration there to really pull you along. And anytime
Hmm.
you're depending on your narration to make the movie work,
Yeah.
you probably needed to do a little more work with the actual stuff going on. It seems like they've got a lot of work to do in a
Yeah.
short amount of time to get to where they want to get, and that's tough for a movie
Correct.
to do sometimes. So I give it a little bit of grace. But I agree with you. I think the beginning is the weakest part of the movie.
Hmm.
All the way up until we see Emma Stone, and then
Yeah,
it's like the movie
pretty
just
much.
rockets and just, kind of goes where it's going.
Yeah.
Not to
For
say the young actors that portrayed like the three of them, as kids or whatever. I mean, like Jasper and Horace and
mm,
Cruella. I thought they were fine. I thought they did fine. It was a difficult thing for the movie to do to get us to where it needed to be.
yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with you on that.
Yeah. So that was definitely one thing that I was like, oh. And then, like you said, as soon as Emma Stone comes in, I'm like, oh, okay, all right, I'm having a good time. And luckily, because it is a 2 hour and 14-minute movie, the beginning's not a big percentage of that, so you can
Right.
forgive it. The other thing was the really bad CG. Like, there was some truly atrocious computer generated characters, specifically the dogs
The
in the
dogs. Yeah.
movie,
Yeah.
where but I would understand if it was in moments where they were doing weird tricks or stunts that you
Mhm.
might not want to teach a dog. But there was moments where they had made a CG dog they were just sitting next to the characters or like walking alongside them, and I'm just there like, why? I don't understand, with all the money that Disney has and the fact that this had a $200 million budget. Like, did they just run out of money when it came to post production, or
Yeah.
did they put it all into the de-aging of because there are some moments of de-aging in the film that looked fine. So I'm like, is that where all the money went? And then they just made, it really harkened back to like Harry Potter and the Philosopher's or Sorcerer's Stone type CG. It was
Mhm.
rubbery, it was awful. Yeah, that's definitely a major negative for
And
me.
it's weird coming from Disney too, who just did, the Lion King, CG, which was just astonishing. In fact, it was so good it made the movie terrible. Like, you're like, wait, lions aren't supposed to sing like that.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it's weird that they couldn't get some of that right. No, I definitely saw the same thing along those lines with the CG.
Hmm.
Yeah, it also has it. The movie, I think, progresses well after we kind of get to the Emma Stone part of
Hmm.
it. But I think it's trying to do too much at times. I think
Mm.
this movie hinges on a twist, and I don't know that we need to do a sif spoil on this because there's not really necessarily anything to talk about once you know the
Mm.
twist. But it hinges on this twist that I'm not sure what it does for the story. You know, it
Mm.
it's I think it's supposed to add more gravitas than it actually does. And so I was just kind of like, I was fine with the rivalry before the twist. I didn't need the twist to
Mm.
complicate that or, in any way. And so I feel like for whatever reason, they felt like they had to do those things. Now, those things might have worked for a lot of people. I don't know. But for me, it just kind of complicated things in an unnecessary way and also added to, a movie that is already a little bit long. So,
Yeah.
could have been a
Yeah,
little simpler.
I agree. I almost the thing. Okay, so with the twist, I definitely saw it coming. In fact, I think I said it to the people I was watching it with, like, you know, 20 or 30 minutes before it happens. I was like, I bet you this is what it is. And it was. And I was like, well, yeah, okay.
Mhm.
But I agree. I don't really think it added anything. And I almost feel like it would have been more of a twist to not have a twist. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Yeah.
Because it was
Yeah.
so glaringly obvious where you're just
Mhm.
like, all right, yep, I see where this is going.
Yeah.
That it just again it kind of pulled you out a little bit, and I definitely, not to spoil or anything, but I will say there are some characters who I feel like are put out there as red herrings.
Mhm.
One character in particular, and I feel like that's more because of who the performer is. But so the twist kind of was like, oh wait, actually this is what you expected. But I don't know, I just don't feel like it served anything, and probably could have shaved a good 15 minutes off the movie, making it a little bit more, digestible for your average moviegoer.
Yeah, and it's also hard because we're all at different stages of our movie comprehension and our movie
Hmm.
watching, and especially when you make a movie for a younger audience, which this movie is supposed to be for all ages. That's what Disney
Hmm.
does. Like, there is this need to put in these kind of, story movements that
Hmm.
for children and, maybe people who just, aren't thinking in those ways, they get to be fun little gasp moments or aha moments. But this movie has several of them, and in each time
Mm.
I felt like the majority of the audience was ahead of the movie.
Yeah.
And there's another twist that's kind of, it's not a twist, but there's a fake out towards the end as well that is just the complete
Mm.
most nonsense fake out I've ever seen in a movie. Like, it's just like, who in the audience, you know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like, without
Yeah.
like,
No, I know
so
exactly.
so yeah, so I feel like that's my main issue with this movie that keeps me from kind of being like, oh, this is amazing,
Mm.
is I think the story is just it's a little bit much. I think they tried to do too much. I think it could have been a lot simpler and a lot more
Hmm.
fun if it was simpler
Yeah.
in that way.
And I also feel like there were moments that maybe they just hadn't fully ironed out or decided they want in there. So I will say there is kind of like a romantic subplot that's hinted at
Yeah, a
between
little bit. Yeah.
between the Emma Stone and Joel Fry character,
Right.
or Cruella and Jasper. It's like touched on through looks and phrases, but especially by the end, I was like, wait, was that intentional or was that more of a actor choice? Like, it just kind of felt like they maybe wanted to go for it, and then Disney were like, no, we can't have a romantic subplot for a villain, and so they just pared back on it or something.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
The
definitely.
other negative I wanted to mention is this movie left me unsure of its place in the Dalmatians canon.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. I come away from this going, I don't think this can be what you've presented to me. I don't think can be a prequel to 101 Dalmatians. That I like, I watched I watched the original this week to just kind of confirm my suspicions there. There are things that happen in the original 1961 animated film that make no sense, zero sense, if this is what happened before that movie. So I think they're creating their own canon here. I think this is supposed to be its own, like if they do a sequel, it may take place based on a mid-credit scene. It may take place in kind of that same time frame that the 1961 does, but this is a different Cruella. It's a different Jasper. It's a different Horace. And I think that's okay. I was a little confused at times. Like I don't know how you make that clearer, to an audience going in. And I don't even know that it's necessary. But I do know that it distracted me a little bit because I would have these bunny trails of, as someone who loves the original, like, I see what you're trying to do here, but that doesn't make sense with what we've seen in the animated one. And then finally I just had to give it up and just go, okay, this is its own thing.
Yeah.
Because honestly, it turns from, can you redeem a villain like that's from the 1961 to this is not a villain.
Yeah.
like it genuinely, if this is the only canon in this universe, Cruella's not a villain. Yeah. She's just not a villain. I don't think that's a spoiler. She's just not a villain. And she never will be based on this. I mean, obviously there could be a turn. But anyway, so yeah, it was a little weird for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think, it is kind of that initial question going in of like, how do you redeem someone who wants to kill puppies? And the answer to that Disney took was, you don't, because
you don't.
This isn't the same person.
This isn't the same person, yeah.
But I almost feel like this was kind of similar to what they did in Maleficent, where it was a completely, like, that is not the same character as in Sleeping Beauty. Having said that, I do feel like the Maleficent movie fits in more within the canon based of Sleeping Beauty. If you watch them back to back, you could see how maybe like certain bits were misinterpreted and actually this is how it was meant to end. While this one was just like, it was almost like they all sat down in the writer's room and were like, I don't know, man. How do you make people like people who want to kill dogs? Like you can't. Yeah. That is, everybody knows that's the cardinal movie sin. And so the answer is you just make her not. So yeah.
I mean, if they try to do the follow-up to be like the 101 Dalmatian story from the villain's perspective kind of thing.
Yeah.
I just don't think it works because it's just a different character than was in there. There are also some interesting things, without getting into too much detail, that confused me about Pongo and Perdita, and I'm just like, so you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if that's
and Roger and Anita, Roger and Anita as characters. You're just like, well, but if anything, even down to let's say the title song, doesn't make sense when you watch the original one.
Yeah.
Because he's already written it. But then in the original one, he then writes it again for the first time. And he's never met Cruella.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, he met Estella. Anyhow, yeah. So it did have moments where I just got distracted by my own need to follow those threads and my own confusion. Yeah. I don't know if you hold it against the movie or like, but it made the viewing experience a little bit more off for me. Having said that, it's still such a fun movie, and the performances are absolutely incredible, like you said. So, I think this is a case for me of two movies that are really fun to watch, and a total recommend. Both of them are a total recommend for me, but both have decent sized negatives that I can see people getting distracted by and confused by. So yeah.
Yeah. I agree. I think they're both movies that are really fun and entertaining, and you just don't need to think about it very much afterwards. Just enjoy the ride, let it take you where it wants to take you, and then immediately move on.
Speaking of immediately moving on, why don't we do that?
Oh, wait, can I just say one more thing?
Sure. You just gave me a great segue. And look, when you're hosting something and you get a good segue, you tend to use it. But go ahead.
Okay, sorry, there's just something I have to say, which is that this is the first movie in a long time which made me audibly react, and I'll say viscerally react, and I'll just say it's a moment with a banana that I literally just, I'll say I was retching, particularly with an action a character takes with a banana, and me and the people we were watching it with were literally just like, no, oh, no. So just be prepared when you see a banana on screen. That's all I'll say.
It's amazing. That's amazing. That's a good trigger warning. It's definitely a banana trigger warning for you there. That was one of my favorite scenes, though, was that comeuppance scene with that store manager. I just thought that was beautiful.
He was great. Yeah.
Before we head on to the best ever challenge, big old thank you to our SIF Pop members. You make this happen, and we appreciate you for doing it for us. If you're interested in taking a look at the different levels and kind of what the different perks are that go along with it, we've reinstituted the monthly video hangouts at one of the levels, ad-free podcasts at every level, and then the bonus episodes of the podcast are at the $5 level. So you can check all that out at patreon.com/siftpop. We do try to do a bonus episode every single week for you guys and have a fun time doing it. So thank you to existing SIF Pop members. You're keeping us strong, keeping us going. And if you've been thinking about it and you love what goes on here and you want to support it, just go check it out. And we appreciate you for doing that. That's patreon.com/siftpop. All right, let's move on to the best ever challenge. We're going to do best ever Disney remakes. Now, this is a very specific type of Disney remake, and they're more reboots. They're like live action reboots / remakes that they've been doing. We pulled from a very specific list. So we'll go number 5 to number 1. If you have something higher than I mention it, feel free to trump it, and we'll wait till it's on your list to talk about. All right, let's go ahead and start off. What's your number 5?
The Lion King.
Oh, it made your top 5. Nice.
Yep. Okay, so I really enjoyed it. I know that there's some, I would almost say like anti-Uncanny Valley going on because it's real animals doing the movie. But at the end of the day, it's still Lion King, and I really, really like Lion King. And first of all, the visual effects are insane. Like, especially certain parts of the landscape, my friends and I were in the cinema and we were literally like, how? No, they just filmed it. They just went to like the desert and filmed it. Like, nah, this isn't animated. So that alone, I think, had me. I was like, this is amazing. But I still really just enjoyed it because I really, really like The Lion King, represent 1994 babies, including the movie. And so, yeah, I walked out having had a really good time. I mean, I will probably still put on the animated over this one if I had to pick, but I would still enjoy it if I had to watch it. Like, I wasn't upset having watched it.
Yeah, I don't like this movie, and it probably for me is. So I have not always, but I have usually fought back against the unnecessary argument, the argument of why are we making movies we've already made before? That's unnecessary. Well, all movies are unnecessary. Like, we're trying to have a good time, and, I've enjoyed most of them. But that argument to me for the first time felt right for this movie. This movie doesn't try, in my opinion, very much or anything new. And everything it does to me is lesser than the original. And, the only thing I could say is that the visuals, like you talk about, are different. They're spectacular, they're beautiful, they're amazing. But they're also it's also harder for the animals, in my opinion, to emote, like, all those kind of things. So yeah, this was the one I walked out of going, oh, so this is what people mean when they say a movie is unnecessary. It's like, oh, I kind of agree with them on this one. But I'm glad you loved it. And I will stand with you on the original Lion King being amazing, and we'll just have our unity on that.
Okay.
But no, look, hey, here's the other thing. Like, if you look down the list that we pulled off of these movies that kind of fit this category, this is the one that has made the most money. Like, this is the one that did the best. So yeah, this movie made 500 and something million just here in the States. Like, it blew up. So yeah, I obviously there are plenty of people who loved this movie.
Well, I guess there's something to be said that this is the Lion King that the new generation will grow up with, right? So for them, the animated one will be the kind of vintage one that they'll maybe go back to, but this is the one they'll know and rewatch and rewatch and rewatch and rewatch. But I mean, I still enjoy it, and I see it kind of as like Disney's proof of concept of like, look how good we are. This is amazing. Pat on the back. And I don't see it like, I might bite my tongue in the future, but I really don't see it aging badly in terms of the visual effects as time goes on. So to that, I say, well done. Congratulations on all your money.
The Lion King made $1.6 billion worldwide. $1.6 billion, including 543 million in the US. So, and we can mention what others made as we talk about them if we want to.
Yep. Sounds good.
I will go with Aladdin for my number 5.
Trump.
All right, good. I'm glad you liked Aladdin. I really enjoyed that one. All right, what's your number 4?
Aladdin.
Hey!
But yeah, so I went in similarly to Cruella. I went in expecting to hate this movie, not just dislike it, hate the movie, because the last movie I'd seen from Guy Ritchie was King Arthur Legend of the Sword, which, as someone whose name is based upon the King Arthur legend, I'm very protective of it, and that was one of the worst interpretations of the King Arthur legend I've ever seen. So that's number 1. Number 2, I was like, how is Will Smith going to live up to Robin Williams? This isn't going to happen. Sure. And so I just was like, nah. And then I walked in being like, I enjoyed that. That was so good. So yeah, really like beyond my expectations.
Yeah, I really think this movie took everything from Aladdin, and yes, we get presented pretty much the same story. It excises a lot of the things that haven't aged well from that story and the way we treat other cultures and things like that. And I really appreciated that. And it just twists them a little bit. It just says, yeah, but we're doing this version. And, Will Smith's genie, you don't have to compare him to Robin Williams' genie because they're doing completely different things. They're completely different characters. And I liked it. I really liked it. I liked some of the spins they put on the classic songs. I thought that was interesting. They didn't just sing the exact same songs. They put a little bit of, spin on it, a little bit of oomph on it. So yeah, I really had a good time with this. Enough that it made my number 4. Aladdin made just over $1 billion worldwide. It is the 3rd most money-making movie of these movies. Made 355 million in the US and Canada. So there you go. Cool. All right, so my number 4 then, is that where we're at?
Yes.
This is where I have Maleficent.
Trump.
All right. I guess we're on to your number 3 then. What do you got at number 3?
Maleficent.
Yay! Now look, Alice, did you do this on purpose just because you wanted to talk about every movie All right. Go ahead.
I just wanted to be the first to talk
That's
about
right.
it.
That's right. Well, tell us about Maleficent.
So correct me if I'm wrong. This was besides, like 101 Dalmatians and, those type of movies. This was the first of like Disney's new reboot sort of like
Yeah, like
strategy that they're doing,
do
right?
you count? Okay, so let's talk about this. This is a good point to
Yeah.
talk about this. You've got a Jungle Book movie that they actually did in 94, live
Yeah.
action Jungle Book. And then you've got the 101 Dalmatians. You've got 102 Dalmatians that they did with Glenn Close. And that's in 96 and 2000. And then I think you have to start it with Alice in Wonderland in 2010. That feels to me like the first real attempt to go, okay, we're going to do the animated, but do the live action. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't start it with Jungle Book or 101 Dalmatians, but probably because it wasn't really a strategy at that point. But the Alice in Wonderland feels like the first even though there were 4 years before Maleficent came out. So yeah, you've got Alice in Wonderland in 2010 and Maleficent in 2014, and then they just come every year. So
yeah.
And then once you get to 2019, they're just like, hey, let's do 4 of them this year.
Yeah. Let's just all of them go through the back catalog. Let's go. So that is really interesting because I completely didn't even think about Alice in Wonderland. Like I read the list, but I just didn't even didn't pop into my head because it felt so Tim Burton-y, I guess, that I just didn't. While Maleficent feels more like these new remakes in that it's like what you know, but with a twist. But I mean, I really enjoy it, and I revisit it every few years or so, and every time I have a great time. Angelina Jolie is just, her star power is amazing, and she's beautiful, and she's talented, and I hate it. No, I'm joking. But it was just a really cool twist. I like the lore they brought in. I'm a big fan of fantasy world building, and the twists on like, unlike Cruella, where it felt completely different and a different character, this feels like, this is kind of like if someone else rewrote it, but from the other perspective. That's the original Sleeping Beauty. And then this is kind of what actually happened. It's like the original fairy tales versus the Disney version of the fairy tales, if you will. So I really enjoyed that. And I'm just a fantasy, like I love fantasy, and this was so fantastical and cool. So big fan.
Yeah, me too. I think it's really well done. I think Angelina Jolie is great. I think pretty much everything you said I echo. And it's just a good watch. And it's the emotion works too. Which people know that's one of my most important things. If the themes work, if the emotion works, I'm going to dig it quite a bit, and I think they do here. So yeah, that's why it's at number 4 on my list and number 3 on your list.
Yes.
So now my number 3, which I'm sure is your number 2. So actually, I'm not sure. I had Christopher Robin at number 3.
Not on my list, but in my honorable mentions.
I really like this movie quite a bit, in fact. And I think part of it has to do with the performance, but I think this movie so perfectly gets what makes the Winnie the Pooh stories so attractive, so interesting. It understands just like the optimism of it, the childhood nature of it, the idea that these stories are often about what it means to be a child versus an adult. And this movie goes to that and says, okay, let's take adult Christopher Robin and remind him what it means to be a child. And I just think it works really, really well. There's a scene towards the end of this movie with Winnie the Pooh and Christopher Robin that I just like tears, just like, it's just so beautiful. And
me too.
So yeah, I really dig this one. And if you haven't checked this one out, because I think this one flew under the radar quite a bit. If you haven't checked this one out, I would do it. I was trying to see where this one landed. Yeah, it made under 200 million worldwide, under 100 million domestically. There are only 3 of these movies that made less. So yeah, very much flew under the radar. Didn't get on a lot of people's attention, but I think this one's really, really good. So that is, there you go. That's my number 3.
I agree. It's Hook for the new generation.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good way to say it. I agree. Number 2. What's your number 2?
Mine is Cinderella.
Mine too. Let's talk about it. Hey.
Okay. I wonder if our number 1's the same, in which case it's a very similar list. I really, again, I was like, oh, they're really rebooting Cinderella. Okay. I mean,
Mhm,
what's there new to say? But first of all, the costumes and the set design in this movie are just something else. Like the
mhm,
Cinderella dress is spectacular. The palace and the cool like outfits and the way that they frame the whole film visually is very impressive. But the
mhm,
casting's also really great too. I mean, it's also directed by Kenneth Branagh, and I really love most of his films.
mhm.
You know, let's not talk about Artemis Fowl. Anyway, um, but yeah, I didn't expect much, but I really love how they gave her so much more agency. Like she didn't just like accidentally herself into all the events.
Mhm,
And they also made, I feel, the rest of the characters more three-dimensional than they are in the original, particularly the prince, who when you watch the original he has like 10 lines in the whole
mhm.
movie. He's just kind of there, which I think happened a lot in the earlier Disney animated films. But yeah, I think it was just a really pretty movie in every way.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I love what they did with the Cinderella character. On Twitter this week, somebody reposted my written review of Cinderella, where basically I talk about how the Cinderella in this movie went from happily ever after to happily even after,
Yeah.
and the idea that no matter what happens to her, and so many things have happened to her, she finds contentment, and
Yeah.
like they very clearly at the culmination of this movie and the Cinderella story, which has been all about my true prince, and
Mm,
when will that happen? And I hope the shoe fits or whatever. They clearly have her communicate. If that never happens, I'm good. And
yeah.
that is such a powerful, important thing for them to turn on their head like that. And they continue those kind of ideas in Frozen and some other places as well. And I've really appreciated their kind of turn of the princess idea to understand it as a fully formed human being who is
Yeah.
complete without these other things that many movies have told us that women need to be complete. And so,
Yes.
yeah, I really appreciate that in this one.
Yeah.
I love this movie a lot. All right, it's time to find out if our number ones are the same. What do you got, Alice?
Beauty and the Beast.
No, our number ones are not the same. I had this
Oh,
in honorable
really?
mention. Yeah, I had this in honorable
Oh,
mention. Yeah.
Oh, this is, you know, when you fan cast things and you're like, oh, I'd really love it if this was made, and I'd really love it if these people were in the roles. And you're just like, that's never going to happen. And then it happened, and it happened
Mhm.
with this one. So, of the original Disney oeuvre, my two favorites are Beauty and the Beast and Little Mermaid, right? I mean, Little Mermaid remains to be seen with that one. We'll see how that goes. But
Yeah.
Beauty and the Beast has always been my, like, I adore that film, the original. And when they were starting the remakes, I was like, oh my gosh, imagine if they did it. And then Emma Watson would be so great. And I was a big Downton Abbey fan at the time. So I was like, man, Dan Stevens would be a cool prince. Emma Thompson would be a great Mrs. Potts. Like, it was insane. And then it happened. And I was like, wait, what? What? I'm sorry, what? And then it came out, and I just. Oh, it's everything I love in the film. I mean, again, similar to Lion King, I do feel that the original outshines this one a little bit, but unlike Lion King, I do feel like it has its own elements. It creates more dimension for some of the side characters in particular. Obviously, the Beast has his own song. He has a little bit more, rather than just like, I'm a beast and grumpy all the time. Like, he's a bit more of a fleshed out character in
Mhm.
this one.
Yeah.
And it's so magical. And I just, you know what? I might watch it today after after we finish this. So, because it's been a hot minute, but yeah, I really, really love it, and it's just my nerdy fan dreams come to life. And when they did Taylor's Oldest Time, you bet I cried in the theater.
Yeah. Yeah. I like this movie. This movie it really frustrates me when people say this one doesn't do anything new with the story, because this one absolutely 100% does some new stuff with the
Hmm.
story. And I think that's missed by a lot of people, but I really enjoy it. Like you said, the casting's great. Dan Stevens, just like
Mm,
I would it wouldn't have been my fan casting. Like you mentioned fan casting, I wouldn't have thought of him as the Beast, but he's
yeah.
so great in the role. And yeah, this is good stuff. I'm glad you
Mm.
mentioned it. By the way, that is the number 2 money-making movie of these. Made 1.2 billion worldwide. So the $4 billion makers were Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and Alice in Wonderland. Right?
Really?
Yes. Isn't that interesting?
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Alice.
fine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Mine is the number 5 movie making, money making, just under $1 billion. The Jungle Book. I really
In my honorable
like
mentions.
I
Yeah.
really like what they did here. I love the animal characters here, how they did them. I love the way they shifted the plot of this movie to actually mean something and do something. The original is a very empty movie. It's just, just about a kid living in the jungle. And I get it, like that's fine, but this takes some time to, to really talk about fear and what it means to overcome fear, what it means to grow up. Like there's a lot of great stuff here. The only thing about this movie that I didn't like was the music. I think it forced the songs in. I think this is a better movie without the songs. And I love those songs. I absolutely love the songs from the original Jungle Book, but they just feel very out of place here to me. But everything other than that, I really, really enjoy about the Jungle Book. So comes in as my number 1. That's all I had. You mentioned my honorable mentions. So did you have any other honorable mentions that you wanted to mention for your honorable mentions? Did you want to mention them?
Yes, I do. I had 5, but you mentioned 2 of them in Jungle Book and Christopher Robin, so I have 3 others. One is 101 Dalmatians, the Glenn Close one, who I feel like this is definitely a bit of a nostalgia pick. I remember watching it a lot when I was a small child and being horrified by Cruella. And then I love, Hugh Laurie and Arthur Weasley, not his actual name, but his character name in Harry Potter. I love them as the sidekicks, and it's just fun and silly and everything you'd want to watch as a kid because you got dogs and you got scary villain and you got happy ending. So I remember enjoying that. Maleficent 2, I didn't expect anything from that movie. I was like, wow, that made enough money to get a sequel. And then I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I love the world building again. I love how it's a bit bigger, but not way too big so that it's a bit silly. And then again, the character development and everything, just really enjoy that film. And then finally, Lady and the Tramp, I do enjoy. That was probably the first Disney Plus original or straight to Disney Plus movie I saw.
Yeah.
And the CG was all right. It wasn't the best that Disney has delivered, but I really enjoyed Lady and the Tramp, and my partner and I are obsessed with dogs, so it was just fun to watch them. And then it was just really nice to know that the dog that they got to play the tramp or to model off the tramp was an actual dog they found in a kill shelter and saved. And that warmed my heart a little bit. And so I was like, oh, I love this movie even more now.
I haven't seen that one. I haven't taken the time to see the new Lady and the Tramp. So maybe I will, since you've given that little recommendation. We also didn't mention Mulan, which I thought had its positive points, but overall wasn't all that great. But I did want to throw that out there. As far as what's coming up, they have announced Little Mermaid. Rob Marshall's going to make a version of that. Jon Favreau is going to do a follow-up to The Jungle Book.
I don't know about that.
Barry Jenkins is doing a Lion King follow-up. That could be interesting.
I'm so excited for that because one of my favorite Disney movies of all time is Lion King 2. Yeah. And I am obsessed with that. In fact, not to, again, give too much information, but one of my childhood crushes was Kovu from Lion King 2.
Nice.
You know how a lot of people's was Simba? Mine was Kovu. So I am here. If they do that, Simba's Pride, I am ready. My body is ready. Let's go.
Bring it on. Bring it on. I'm a huge fan of Lion King 2.5. Is one of my favorites. I enjoy that quite a bit. Mark Webb has been tagged to do a Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So that could be interesting. There's an untitled Aladdin sequel, Hunchback. I don't know how you do Hunchback. That's gotta be so weird.
Uh,
Ba-
uh, it's going to be very weird, especially,
yeah.
I was talking to my friend whose Hunchback is her favorite Disney movie, would you believe?
Mhm.
And I was like, I mean, they're not going to do Hellfire, are they? Because like that's a really dark song, but
That whole
also if you,
movie.
yeah,
That whole
the whole
movie is
movie
dark. Yeah.
the whole movie's problematic, let alone
Yeah.
dark. And I'm like,
Yeah.
how are they not going to just strip it bare of
Yeah.
everything? So
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see.
It'll be interesting. Bambi has been announced, as well as Hercules.
Mm.
Both of those have been announced.
Oh, I'm so excited for Hercules. I swear, if they do what they did to Mulan and take out the music, I will riot. I will go to Disney's headquarters and I will riot because the one of the best like music in Disney is the Hercules soundtrack. So I swear, do not do this to
Are
me,
you
Disney.
listening, Disney? Are you listening?
I mark my words. If I don't get gospel truth, oh, you will have made an enemy. Not a powerful one, but an enemy.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. The Disney Plus films that have been announced: Peter Pan and Wendy. David Lowery's directing that. That's supposed to come out next year. Robert Zemeckis is directing a version of Pinocchio. Juan Carlos Fresnadillo is directing Sword in the Stone. That could be interesting. I'd be down for a
Yeah,
Sword
I'm
in the
excited
Stone.
for that.
And then Robin Hood, Lilo and Stitch, and an untitled Prince Anders film from the Aladdin series. So
Yeah, that was a weird one when they announced that. I
yeah.
was like, why? So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But
Let's just say they show no signs of letting up.
Yeah.
They're going to keep milking that cow for as long as it will give milk. So,
Yep.
so there you
I'm
go.
just waiting for the Black Cauldron reboot because that's a movie that should have a reboot because it has a lot of things that could be improved, but it has a lot of potential, and no one like watched it, and I
Yeah.
loved it as a kid. So
Yeah.
come on, Disney, come on.
All right, let's do our buried treasure. What's that one thing in any area of pop culture that you want to talk about? I'll go first so that you can finish us off. I watched the third season of Master of None on Netflix, and I really, really enjoyed it. Aziz Ansari is kind of the brain behind this. He went through some stuff a couple years ago that he has addressed in his comic special, different things like that. But he has definitely stepped behind the camera for the most part during this third season. It's 5 episodes. They're varying different lengths, and it really is just the tale of this love story between these two women. And I found it powerful and beautiful. And some of the topics it touches on are just not things you really see you really see like dug into in this way. Like it's just it's willing to go to some places and to do it with sensitivity that I haven't really seen done before. So it's really beautiful. Something you might want to check out. It's so different than the first 2 seasons. So if you enjoyed the first 2 seasons of Master of None, just know you may enjoy this one too, but it'll be for different reasons because it's a very different show. So wanted to get that out on Netflix. Master of None season 3 is out. What about you, Alice?
Okay, so this is a very big moment for me. So I am a one-woman like promoter for this film. It is called Perfect Sense, and the way I will frame it is this: it came out in 2011, and no one saw it, and I just happened across it one day, and now I will literally make everyone I know watch this until it has a cult following. It is directed by David Mackenzie, aka Hell or High Water. It stars Ava Green and Ewan McGregor, and actually it's like weirdly good, like I'll say relevant to our times right now. So let me tell you a little bit about what it's okay. About. So Ewan McGregor plays a chef, and Eva Green plays an epidemiologist, and it's kind of about how they meet and start to fall in love, right? Simple enough. However, the whole thing is on a backdrop of a worldwide epidemic, or pandemic maybe, where everyone starts to lose their senses one by one. Hence the name Perfect Sense. So to kind of frame it a little bit more, so for example, the first sense you lose is the sense of smell. But before each sense that you lose, you go through a really intense feeling of just emotion. So right before you lose your sense of smell, you feel grief. You feel all the grief you've ever felt in your life, all the people you've hurt, all the chances you didn't take. You experience it, go through this really intense, like, tragic feeling, and then the next morning you wake up and your sense of smell is gone. And what I really love, so I'm a big fan of the high concept sci-fi. You give me a really cool concept, you give me some really cool themes, I am there. And this movie does that in spades. It explores these themes, it explores how humanity adapts each time, and it's kind of optimistic, which is nice, but it also doesn't shy away from the fact that this is, horrible and people are suffering as a result. And it's just so well made. It's very tight. It's only 90 minutes, and that's as long as you need it to be, but it is just a movie that should really have more notoriety than it does. So if you get a chance to watch it, I really recommend it. If you like high concept sci-fi, you're going to like this one. If you like Ewan McGregor and Eva Green or David Mackenzie, you're going to like this one. If you just like really nice love stories, you're going to like it. So please check it out.
I love it. Perfect buried treasure for the perfect sense. I have not seen it. You are correct. Completely missed me. So I'll have to check that one out as well. So please there you go. We did it, Alice. We did a podcast. Woo! We talked about movies, and now you can go watch the sunrise in Australia.
Yeah. That's another hour or so away.
Yeah, so. Still another hour from sunrise. But just take your time, walk out to the deck, whatever, grab a cup of coffee. And eventually the sun will come out. Eventually.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today for Sif Pop. It is part of the Studio DNA Podcast Network. You can find out more about other shows on the network at studiodna.media or by searching Studio DNA in your podcast player. Huge thanks to producer Phil for producing the show today. Love you, Phil. Thanks to Drew for doing the artwork. Appreciate that as well. And a big thanks to Alice for being our guest guru today. Well done. Really loved having you on. We're definitely going to have you back sometime. So tell us, I know you actually wrote the review that's up on Sif Pop right now for one of the movies we talked about today. So tell people where they can find that and where they can find you online.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I actually wrote the review for Cruella. So if you want to hear about my thoughts a little bit more, go over to sifpop.com and check that out. I also have a monthly column I do called One Stop Pop, where every month I pick a very successful form of media, whether a TV show or movie from the month before, and recommend other forms of media based on it. So, for example, the most recent one I did was the Oscars, and I recommended a TV show, a podcast, not this one, just biases, but a book, and also I believe, I don't even remember the other one, but so there you go, bit of a surprise there. There is a fourth one I recommended, and I'll be making the one for May very soon as well. Other places you can check me out is Letterboxd. I have one there where I put in my little ratings and a quick 2-line review on all the movies I've seen and rank them every year. You can find me there at Ali G Mick, ALIGMICH on Letterboxd and Instagram. And then finally, something I wanted to shout out was a couple friends and I have been making our way through the entire Disney catalog. We are currently at 1966, I believe, but we are actually taking a break right now because we realized that one of us hadn't seen any of the MCU. So we're taking her through that, and then we'll be coming back to the rest. But you can watch our whole journey on the Instagram profile once.upon.a.marathon, at Once Upon a Marathon, and there every time we watch one, we put up our review as well as maybe a line or two about it, and you can check it all out there.
The comments are asking what letter is H. That would be an H over here. So
yep.
No stress.
Sorry, guys.
No stress, Alice.
No stress. All good.
Stress. Thank you to our Patreon supporters as well. We really appreciate you. You can get a whole bunch of fun stuff. You can check that out at patreon.com/SifPop. We love you guys and we appreciate you so much. Lots of ways to connect with us. You can leave a comment, a rating, a review, whether it's at Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. That always helps us out. And if you want to send us an email, you can do that as well. I hear people still use email occasionally. It's feedback@sifpop.com. And finally, if you're having a good time, your movie-loving friends will probably like this show too. So let them know about it, and that listening is much easier than holding a microphone and a shotgun at the same time. We will be back next week with some more reviews, still kind of looking at what's coming out. Probably Conjuring 2, maybe something else, but we will see you then. Bye. Bye. Is there a way that you say bye in Australian, like a common like
like the opposite of g'day?
Yeah.
We just kind of go see ya, or
does a g'day work both ways?
No, it's not like aloha.
Okay. Okay,
No,
just
no.
making sure. Just making
Yeah.
sure. Nice.
Yep.
Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, no, I don't think there is an Australianism. Just, the most Australianism, which I'm not sure if I said it in the show, was that every now and again we go, yeah, nah, or nah, yeah, which yeah, nah means no, and nah, yeah means yeah.
Yes, it's always what you end on. Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
Thank you to our live viewers. We appreciate you hanging out with us. I saw the one Heath Bar in there, and Jay Bourgeois, and some others hanging out with us today. So thank you for that. We always appreciate it. We're going to record some spoilers now for Quiet Place Part 2. So we are going to wave good day. No, wait.
No. Goodbye, I guess.
No. We're going to wave goodbye to everybody in the video.